Hi, I'm Peggy Farren. Welcome to the Understand Photography Show, where we talk about travel, nature, and fine art photography. Well, you know what? We've got a great guest today. Charles Needle is going to talk about in-camera techniques for impressionistic photography. And let me just tell you, we are here at a workshop, or at a conference, I should say, and I went to one of Charles' program, and his photography is phenomenal. So stay tuned, because we're going to learn a lot from Charles Needle. The Understand Photography Show is first a podcast, so please listen to us on iTunes or Spotify or Stitcher, however you listen to podcasts. And if you would leave us a review on iTunes, it is so helpful to us. It helps us come up in the search engines in iTunes. We are coming up pretty good, because we've been doing this almost 4 years now, but the more audience, the better we can serve you, the better guests we can get, everything like that. Our website is understandphotography.com, and there you will see the show notes from today's episode and every other episodes, all the way from episode number 1 back in, I don't know, what was that, 2016? Is that right? I don't know. It's been a while. When you get to our website, you'll see the very first thing you see on understandphotography.com is click here for freebies. Click there, and just, you can download anything you want off of there, but you kind of have to do it one at a time. In return, we ask for your email address, and we put you on our mailing list. We send out a newsletter once a month, but we've got essential tips for travel photography, which camera should I buy, how to get tack sharp images every time, 30 unique and practical gifts for photographers. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff on there, so check it out at understandphotography.com. Also check out our signature class, which is called the 4 Weeks to Proficiency in Photography. That's an online class, but it's interactive. It's for beginner to intermediate photographers. It's a foundational class. Your first class is shoot in manual. You're going to learn the composition rules. You know what? We're going to be talking about impressionistic photography in this episode. Yet, composition rules still apply even to abstract photography. So you need to know what those rules are. Yeah, you can break them, but you got to know what they are first. Anyway, the class is a very, very strong, it'll give you a strong foundation in photography. So go to understandphotography.com and check out whenever the next one begins, because it is an interactive class. It has start dates. So Charles Needle is a fine art nature photographer. He's written a couple of successful books, and if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, we've got his books here. Impressionistic, I can't say the word, impressionistic photography is one of the books. And of course, he's a great macro photographer, wrote a book on that as well. So welcome, Charles Needle.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
What kind of name is Needle? Where'd that come from?
I don't know. I was born with it.
Is it English? Do you think it's English?
It may be partly English, yeah, or Polish. I don't know. Anyway.
I don't know.
So I get teased about it a lot. But anyway.
I like it. It's easy to remember.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, it's easy to spell. It's not just easy. So tell us the short version of your photographic journey. How'd you become a photographer? But give us the very
Sure,
short version.
I'll keep it brief. I started back in, I guess it's 20 years ago, and I was actually going through a chronic illness, chronic fatigue / yuppie flu, whatever. And the camera became a therapy tool for me, and I discovered close-ups, and I mean, it was exhausting for me to just walk to the mailbox kind of thing. So I started out with macro and just got a lot of joy through the lens doing that. And now I'm, fully recovered, traveling the world, teaching and all of that. But I credit photography in a big way with, the passion for it, for helping me to get out of that.
The healing journey. Wow.
And I started reading research about how nature can be restorative, and ended up doing a DVD that now plays in over 200 hospitals of images of nature with music on closed circuit TV and all of that. So that's how I initially got started, and then I started to take workshops and got a lot out of that, and just it grew from there, and started doing private lessons. Then I did workshops in my backyard, and then now it's Europe and Canada and all over. So that's the short version of kind of what got me into it. But it made me really literally stop and like not only smell the roses, but photograph them too. So anyway.
I love that. So today we're going to talk about impressionistic photography. Now what does that mean?
Well, you know, I do take groups to Monet's garden. That's one of the places near and dear to my heart. And so while I was there, I just started experimenting one day with a lot of in-camera techniques for making multiple exposures, long exposure type things. Everybody's maybe done long exposure, but doing multiple exposures, it's one of the most hidden features, I think, in a camera, is that multiple exposure feature. And they're now developing it more and more with mirrorless cameras. Even the point and shoots have it. Some of them will only do 2 at a time, but you can do, some of the cameras like my Nikon D800 will do up to 10. All in camera. You know, this all started though with film, when people would take slides and put them all into one slide mount and make a multiple exposure that way. But you can now do it digitally, and it's phenomenal. And even with my iPhone, I love my phone. Started doing it. There's a couple of apps that I can mention to people that do impressionistic things even with a phone now.
Okay.
If you don't have a camera that does it. So it's super exciting.
What does it mean, though?
So impressionistic, it comes from, you know, Monet was sort of one of the fathers of impressionist painting and all. And so it originated with painters, and they started doing images with very tiny brush strokes, and it's almost as if you're squinting at a scene, and it's showing that here's what it is, but it's not crystal clear of that's what it is.
Okay.
But so it's recognizable and representational, but it's not literal. So that's what impressionistic means, or impressionism. So using some of the similar ideas of the way painters saw light, you can recreate that with your camera.
I have to tell you my story, because this is such a weird story. So I was in Paris as a tourist, and we took a bus tour to Monet's garden and everything. And I just had my little Lumix Panasonic point and shoot type of camera with me. And I had never seen poppies in my life. I've never seen poppies. I don't know, they don't have them in Detroit or in Florida. Those are the places I've lived.
Sure.
And there were poppies everywhere. So we were leaving, and I was on the bus, and I saw this big field of poppies, and I tried to take a picture, and I was shooting in intelligent auto.
Sure.
I took a picture, and it was blurry. It looked just like a Monet.
There you go. Right. I know. A lot of people have
and it was
done
coming
this
back
stuff.
From his place.
Exactly.
On the bus.
You were channeling Monet.
It was
That's
so
right.
funny, because it was a complete accident.
Sure, sure.
It came out so good. I have it somewhere.
Well, and a lot of times people are too quick to delete an image like that. And I tell all my workshop students, don't be too quick to do that, because you may be able to combine it with another image later if it's blurry or other things like that. So, yeah. There are no mistakes, nothing such as a mistake, unless you completely underexpose an image or something like that, obviously.
Yeah, I was pretty excited about that, because it was a total mistake.
Yeah.
So.
Great.
So, all right, so now you started, your inspiration was Monet's garden, and you started playing around with all these different multiple
kind of
exposures,
playground
slow shutter, all this other kind of stuff. Now, do you feel like you have a style, or do you feel like your style is just ever evolving?
It's ever evolving, but the style for these, I did just keep going with it. And one of the techniques I enjoyed the most was something I actually started to call it multiple exposure Monet, because it's a technique where you're moving the camera slightly out of alignment each time, and when you put all those together, or the camera does it for you, it makes it look like a painting, little tiny brush strokes sort of idea.
Okay, so can you walk us through?
Sure.
Now you have a Nikon.
Yes, and so I should back up for a second though and mention that when you're doing any of these impressionist techniques, 2 things to look for. You want to look for a scene that has tonal contrast and color contrast.
Okay, so
those are the 2 ingredients.
Lights,
right.
Tonal contrast, darks and lights,
right.
And color contrast.
I know, say that 10 times. Color contrast. Yes.
So like, you don't want reds and pinks, you want reds and blues.
Exactly.
Or something.
Yeah, because that's what helps bring out the image even more, makes it kind of pop off.
All right, so
Yeah.
so let's, you slow
So
me down. Slow
no,
me down
no,
on
no,
the
you're
questions. So
fine.
back up. So
So-
that's the first thing you've got to do is find the scene.
Sure, sure. And a lot of times what I'll do is squint at the scene. You know, I mean, Monet almost went blind toward the end of his life, so it actually sort of worked in his favor, I think.
Okay.
And so, you know, it looks weird. You don't want to do it too much in public, I guess, but you're squinting at a scene, you know, a lot of times, and just looking at the tonal variations and the color contrast and all of that. So that's the first thing I'll do. And then I'll, for this Monet thing, I call it multiple exposure Monet. I just kind of came up with that as a name.
You're good with the names.
And I just decided that's what I'm going to call it. And it's just moving it out of alignment each time. And you can start with as few as 2 or 3 exposures. That's what I recommend people start with, and go all the way up to 10 if you wanted at a time.
And so you go into the menu.
You go into the, it's usually in the shooting menu, and it's says multiple exposure, and you engage that by, you know, using the little toggle thing, and then you can set the number of exposures. You can, in the more advanced cameras now, you can even tell it to save the source images of each multiple that you're doing. You can also set whether you want to do it once or continuously. If you do it once, it means like you take your 3 shots and then it goes back to normal shooting.
Oh, I see.
Or if you do continuous, it'll take the 3 shots, then do another 3 and another 3. But when you're first learning, I suggest people start with just single shot, because you're going to get all confused, you know, when you're doing, did I do 3 or have I done 5? Or, you know, so anyway, and so yeah, and just it's very, very subtle camera movement, like hardly any. You know, if you were to watch me do it, like I'm barely moving my hands to make each little movement. So, and you're not moving during the exposure. You know,
So,
it's just repositioning the camera.
So are you
each
on a
time.
tripod or no?
You can do it on a tripod, and you get more precise results that way. I like doing it both ways. You know, I've done it freehand as well, and it's a lot looser. The cover of my book was done that way, where it's a lot looser sort of treatment, and it just makes it look more painterly. But if you do real tight movements, it's going to look a little more literal, you know, but it still looks like a painting, and it looks very texturized too. And I suggest people also stop down the lens as much as possible.
And what do you
Whatever.
mean by that?
So
Under,
use
are
a
you
small
underexposing,
aperture.
Or you mean
just
sharp
just use a
depth
small
of field?
aperture, right? Sharp depth of field, because you want those little pinpointed. You know, it's almost like pointillism, where they, you know, did points of color. So that's kind of the look that you're going for, and there's going to be a ton of mistakes. Some of those will be great, some of those won't, but just play and experiment. I can't
you're gonna
emphasize that more.
All right, so
enough.
first you go into the menu, you set the multiple. Now I know I've got it, I played around with it on my Canon.
Have you? Okay.
On my Canon 6D, but
Yes.
I think I don't know, because I can't remember. But I thought I could only take 2 pictures.
Maybe.
But
Okay.
I don't know.
But even
I've
2
got the
can be
original
good.
6D, not the Mark
Sure.
II. So I'm going to set that in the menu,
Yes.
and then I'm going to take first picture, and then I'm going to slightly move my camera and take a second picture.
Correct. And then a third. And I like to
however
say,
many you can.
I like to think of it almost like the letter V. So you're moving, you know, your first shot's here, second one up and to the right, third one up and to the left. If you want to
Okay.
come up with a formula for this.
Okay, no,
That's a good
but when you
guideline.
start off, it helps to have a guideline,
Sure.
and then you can get more creative
Right.
as you
right.
learn what you're doing.
So I'd start with 3, and then if you can go up from there, do 5. So if you did 5, you would do almost like an X, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th one in the center.
Okay.
So, but you know, you don't want to get too formulaic about it. And some people have come up with like a script or a way to do this in Photoshop, and you can try it, but it looks a little too computer generated, I've found, you know. Where
Now
you're,
this works best on fields of flowers?
fields of flowers are great. Yeah, you need to have small points of color, or it could work. It doesn't have to just be flowers. It could be fall foliage. It could be, you know, some colorful fabric on a table. I mean, just anything where you're moving the camera slightly to get interesting effects.
That's so
And you're
cool.
making
I can't wait to
abstract
try
art
it.
a lot of times, you know, with this.
Yeah.
But it's
Well-
a ton of fun and highly addictive.
Wow. So now, okay, so we're going to be at F16 probably, or something like that.
Right.
Maybe F11, maybe.
Yes.
But tripod, maybe, maybe not.
Right.
So it should be a bright sunny day.
That's one of the things with lighting on this. Everybody else has packed up their gear at high noon. You can keep shooting with this. It does not matter what kind of light you're using. It works with overcast light, bright sunlight.
People into the ground.
Yeah, I could. I don't, but yeah, I try not to work them too hard.
I try to remember not to do that when I'm on workshops because I have a lot of energy.
There's always that fine line between exhausting people and giving them what they came for. But yeah, so it's really amazing to be able to try it even when the light is super contrasty.
I love that.
So it's funny, painters actually love sunny days. They want sunny days because it shows shadows and contrast and all that, whereas us as nature and fine art photographers in general want sort of bright overcast in general.
Oh, all right.
Unless you're doing a sunrise or
Does it matter about your lens or?
So the lens I use mostly for probably 90% of this stuff is my medium telephoto lens, so zoom lens. It's like the 70 to 200.
Oh, okay.
So that's a great lens.
Are you doing that for compression? Is that why you're using a longer lens like that?
Yes, it compresses the space.
So it kind of smashes everything, like it looks like it's closer together, right?
Right, and it makes it where I can do little vignettes, kind of intimate landscapes.
Okay.
And besides that compression, when you're moving the camera a little bit, if you had a wide angle lens, it's not going to be nearly as noticeable. The optics are such that you notice it more if it's a tighter shot. So
that makes sense.
And it's funny because before I ever started doing this, that was sort of my go-to lens. I just loved that lens. I like the macro lens a lot too, but so and another reason I love that lens is it's got a collar built in, and I don't know if people know what a collar is, not this kind of collar, but a lens collar. And so it allows me to loosen the collar and rotate the lens for some of the techniques.
And that's when you're using a tripod you're talking about.
Yes, but there's a way to do it if you don't have a collar. And the shots that I do with that collar and loosening the collar look like spirals because you're rotating and zooming the lens slightly each time you take an image. So those are ones that start to look like spirals. I don't know if you've ever seen a shot like that.
Okay, wait a minute. I got to get my mind around that.
Yeah, I mean, I could show you in the book.
So you're putting you've got your 70 to 200, you said, right? Or 70 to 300. What'd you say?
Anywhere in the range of 70 to 300, but the lens I use is the Nikon 70 to 200. It's the VR2 lens.
Okay, so you're putting that on a tripod using the collar.
Correct.
All right. You're at f/16, and then you meter to 0.
Yes.
Right? And then you loosen the collar.
Right.
And as you're taking the picture, you turn the lens.
Well,
is that what you
sort
said?
of, kind of.
No.
Yeah. So
okay, I didn't follow
to
that.
this is not multiple exposure Monet. We're switched to a different sort of
topic,
technique.
right.
Yeah. But this one produces a spiral looking image, okay? So you're pointing it at like a field of flowers, filling the frame with just the little tiny blossoms or whatever it is, and you loosen that collar, and then of course you set it to do, like with this technique it's great to do 5 or 7. You can still do 3 or 2.
So you're not, wait, are you on multiple exposure?
Yes, you are on multiple exposure. So you engage multiple exposure, set the camera up, and you're going to use, what I do is I take my left hand and put it on the zoom part of the lens and keep it like locked there, so to speak. Like don't twist my elbow to zoom it at all. Just leave it locked there on just the zoom part of the lens, not the focus part.
Okay.
Only the zoom.
Okay.
And then I take my right hand, and I'm not using a cable release or anything like that. I take the right hand, and again, I'm locked down on a tripod except the collar's loose. And I take the right hand, take a shot, and then rotate the lens slightly, keeping that left hand held on the zoom part of that lens.
Okay.
Take the second, then rotate again slightly, and I'm going in either a clockwise or counterclockwise direction, depending on the way your lens works. And each time you rotate, it's also zooming the lens as well. And that makes the final result look kind of like a spiral. It's real hard to,
I was gonna say,
you have to
this
almost
one sounds
see
hard.
this. Yeah, it's like, patting your stomach and chewing gum and whatever that whole thing is. So But it's a lot of fun. And there's a great quotation from Freeman Patterson, who's a dear friend of mine. We've taught together. He's a Canadian photographer, lives in New Brunswick, 82 years old, still rides a Harley. And he is phenomenal at just seeing and describing things from a visual design standpoint. But he is the one that turned me on to a lot of this stuff. And what he talks about is do-si-doing with your camera. So that's what we're doing really here, is do-si-doing with our camera.
Do-si-do, I love
Think
that.
of your camera as a dance partner, and do-si-do, is kind of what he says. So, but you can get crazy with this stuff. I mean, there's a website, I think, called Camera Toss. Like, there's some
where
guy
they throw
that,
the camera
yeah,
I've
and
never had
you
the
want to
guts
put
to try
a lot of
that.
padding underneath, because you might destroy your camera. But but yeah, it's all about just almost becoming a kid again and playing and experimenting. And I
got me all
have that
excited.
same philosophy with macro too, when I teach macro. So.
All right, let's keep talking though. So in the notes that Heather wrote up, she said basic, rotate and zoom and tilt. So rotate and zoom is what we just
That's
talked
what we
about.
just described.
Basic was the first thing we talked about.
Yes.
What's tilt?
Tilt would be where you're setting the camera up, and you don't have to be on a tripod, but it's a little more precise. And you're just moving the camera up in very, very tiny increments each time you take a multiple exposure.
Okay.
Or you're moving the camera down in tiny, tiny increments each time you take an exposure, moving it down.
Okay.
And again, F16 or F22 or F99 if your camera has F99. Don't we wish we could have F99?
Well, when I interviewed Clyde Butcher, that was when I learned about F60. He shoots everything at F64.
64, yeah, exactly.
But those old cameras, that was
Right.
common.
Like,
But I was like,
I know.
what?
I know, that's an aperture not many of us have. And so, yeah, and just doing that makes a tree, it sort of brings out the texture on the bark of a tree and makes the lines look sort of staccato. It's hard to describe. You'd have to just look at the show notes and look at my books and all of that have images in them.
So fields of flower, that's a good. And you just said barks of
trees, so
kinda cool.
any subject that's vertical is great. You could do the masts of a boat. If you had at a marina and you've got a bunch of boats that have all the vertical masts, you could do it with the mast of the boat. So really anything is
open your
fair
mind up
game.
and try
Try
it on anything.
Yeah, so and when you do those tilts, if there's sky above those trees, you want to be sure to start just below the sky and go down. Versus trying to go up, you end up getting too much sky in your shot, and then the sky pulls your eye out of the frame.
Okay,
so
I see.
If you don't want to include sky, then start right below it and come down.
Okay.
And you can do all of these things I'm talking about with single exposures too. Like that rotate and zoom thing I just talked about could be done with just going, like one single motion of holding onto that lens and just turning it. You're going to get a much smoother spiral than you would get doing it multiple times.
Okay. I'm going to try that.
That makes sense.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun. And I love straight literal photography too. I'm not always doing all this crazy stuff. But it's a great way for people to get out of a rut if they feel like they're just need something new or fresh ideas. And it helps me to see better as a photographer, in every way. So it's a great way to just train your eye even.
Yeah, I think so. I'm ready to try some cool stuff,
Yeah, I wish we could run outside and do a demo right now. So.
Now, what about long exposure techniques? Do you have anything specific?
Let's see. So in general, I think all of us have done waterfalls and things where the subject's moving, or a Ferris wheel, but how about moving the camera instead of having the subject move?
Okay.
I don't know if a lot of people have tried that too much, but with some of what I just described, like the tilt, you could certainly do a big swipe up or down a tree and make that look like a sort of a
blur
continuous blur. You can zoom the lens, and that's a blur. You can also zoom multiple times and do it multiple exposure wise.
It's
it's
cool
really endless.
too.
This is all endless.
Wow, you've got some really
It's kind of
got a good
crazy.
brain there. Yeah.
Thanks.
What about? Okay, I'm just reading these notes here.
Yeah.
Can you She talks about everything that you talked about so far, except for squiggle. What the heck does that mean?
So squiggling is just taking the camera, usually I'm off the tripod for that, and just using a squiggle motion if I'm going down the barks of, or the trunks of trees and just sort
Like
of
a little
squiggling.
S, like a little S
Yeah,
kind of back
like
and forth?
just imagine you have
Or-
cerebral palsy or something,
Oh,
you know, and you're just shaking the camera, or just moving it, you know, in such a way that it's irregular.
So
And-
do you have like a starting shutter speed that for when you do something like that?
Good question. I would start at least maybe a full second at the lead. You know,
second.
yeah. If you
Wow.
try to do something like a squiggle at half a second, it might be too fast of a.
Okay.
And if you're moving it really, really fast, you can do that, but people don't squiggle very
No,
fast.
squiggling sounds like a slow kind of thing.
Yes. So, anyway.
I squiggle slowly.
Yeah, exactly.
So start at a full second, and for our people who are just starting out in photography, remember you're going to meter to 0 every time.
That's
because you
right.
want the exposure, the lighting to be right.
Right, absolutely.
So
Or you could be in shutter priority if you'd like and get that full second that way.
I always
or
forget there's a mode other than manual.
I know. I shoot most of the time in aperture priority,
Do
actually,
you really?
just because most of what I do, I'm trying to vary depth of field, so it just makes it where I don't have to, I can shut off one part of my brain and not have to think about shutter speed as well.
Okay.
So
But in this case,
when you
you
want
would be in shutter priority and not rather than aperture if you wanted
Exactly.
to be in an automatic mode. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's squiggle. I'm going to try it out. I wonder what squiggle sounds like. It would look good on a lot of different, like something colorful, like murals
Yes.
or something.
Yes.
You know, or
Exactly. And you'll get a lot of ones you want to delete. And like I said, don't be too quick to delete some of them, because you could use those as background slides if you're putting type over, you know, an image, or it could be used to combine with another really, really sharp image. You know, you'd have to do it in Photoshop later or something. But
that's a great idea.
so, yeah. And there is a feature in the Nikon cameras called Image Overlay, where you can take any 2 raw images on your memory card and select them, any 2 images. It could be one you shot this morning and another one like later on, even a different day. And the camera will combine the 2 together
Wow.
into one single raw file, and you can even adjust the opacity of each of the 2 images
Right in the camera.
camera, right in the camera. So our cameras are becoming
moly.
more and more like, you know, mini computers for sure.
Actually, I was just with a different guest before you. We were talking about competitions, and she was talking about, oh, you can't, you know, everything has to be in camera with this one competition. But now it's kind of hard. It's that line is becoming fuzzy because
it is.
You can do so much editing
That's
in camera
right.
now.
That's right. Exactly.
So-
And with multiple exposures, that's in camera.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So anyway.
What is a soft glow montage?
Okay. A soft glow montage.
Heather does her homework when she writes.
She does. Good job, Heather. So that's an image that has a kind of an ethereal glow to it. So it's also referred to, a lot of people may know it as the Orton effect.
Oh.
Orton.
Okay.
You probably know it.
Yeah.
Michael Orton, I think was his name, the guy that invented that, lives up in British Columbia. But he came up with this idea of 2 exposures where one is sharp and the other is out of focus. But on the one that's out of focus, you use a different aperture. And the one that's sharp, you use your f/16 or your f/22 or whatever to get maximum depth of field and sharpness. So by combining those 2 together, you get an image that has kind of a glow to it. And
yeah.
it's, if you want to romanticize a scene or things like that, it's a great one. Or even just a single shot of a flower macro, I've done it that way as well, where you would do one sharp. Actually, what I do with that is do both at the wide aperture,
Okay.
so that the background stays kind of soft and isolating your subject. So I would do one that's just a straight shot, like I'd normally do a macro shot. And then the other one would be defocusing the lens. And you want to defocus a lot. Like, it's the way the world looks to those of us that have vision correction when you take off your glasses. And you do have to be in manual focus to do this.
Okay.
This is one of the only techniques where you really must use manual focus.
Okay.
And so by combining those 2, you get this wonderful glow around your subject. So
that's really
and there are
cool.
examples of that, of course, in my book.
Now, can you do that in multiple exposure mode on your camera, so it's right in camera? Is that what you're
You
saying?
could,
Or are
absolutely.
you taking two separate pictures and blending them later?
You could do it that way as well,
could do
but
it
I
either
like
way.
doing it in the camera. So yes, absolutely,
like the
you could.
in-camera
Me
idea,
too.
too.
I don't want to spend hours and hours
Oh,
at the
God,
computer.
I'm so,
So
tired of
it's.
that.
I know.
like to edit,
Yes.
but because I'm a full-time photographer, I'm editing a lot.
Exactly.
When I get to be retired and I get to do photography as a hobby, I will
There
enjoy
you
the
go.
Photoshop a lot more.
Right.
But right now, because I have to sit there and remove blemishes and shadows from, and fix flyaway hair, and I'm sitting at that computer a long time already. I don't want to sit there too much longer.
Exactly. That can
Not
get
for my
very
not
tedious.
not for my fun photography anyway.
Sure.
But I never get tired of taking pictures.
Oh well, exactly.
But sitting at the computer, I get tired of that.
Yeah, I think we all do. So anyway, so yeah, that's a really fun way of doing a little bit different kind of macro shot, or even a scene. You could have a scene where you just want to kind of make it look romantic. Or now, yes, you could also apply some negative clarity to a sharp image and get a similar look, or a soft glow filter, soft focus filter, excuse me. So. But
Okay.
this is fun to just try in camera, and I've actually been experimenting with 3 exposures, where you take one sharp and then one that's slightly out of focus at the wide aperture, and then a third that's even more out of focus at the wide aperture.
Oh, just
and
blend
it
them?
makes the glow sort of like even
Like
stronger.
big time.
Right, it's a stronger glow. So anyway, but with all of these, you don't want the viewer to look at your image and be like, oh, well, yeah, that's what she did. Or, like you really have to be subtle. There has to be a reason for it, and try and think about, I'm big on like feelings and expressing. This is expressive photography. You're trying to express an emotion or a feeling to the viewer, and not just say, hey, here's a literal shot of whatever.
Okay.
So try and think about a feeling that you might have as you're making the image, or what drew you to it in the first place, and we're trying to sort of express it in a way with
Okay.
all the. So yes, at first it's sort of gimmicky and it's fun to try, and
Right.
yay, I got a spiral, but you can take it beyond that too if you want.
Okay, so is there anything else? Because I would like to talk about post-processing a little bit. But
I can't think of any
if there's
other
any shooting things I want to...
techniques that I haven't. This book is pretty comprehensive. Impressionistic Photography is the title, and it's a field guide. I titled it that on purpose because it really is how-to. It's got a lot of screenshots. It's got menus of your camera. Here's how you would set it.
Okay.
Step 1, step 2, so it's not just a pretty coffee table book.
Yeah,
So
I like that.
It helps people to really
Show me. I need to be shown.
be able to, and I'm
not
already
even
in the
from
second printing
Missouri.
of that book.
Ah.
I sold 1,000 copies, and I've just printed 500 more. So,
Awesome. That's so exciting.
and that one was self-published also. So I have another book called Tiny Worlds that's all about macro photography, and
Okay.
that's published by Amherst Media. But-
Okay.
So
And that's a big part of your life and your workshops.
macro
are
is too,
Yeah.
exactly. Both subjects are near and dear, and
Okay.
the iPhone. That's a
That's
new
the
thing
latest
too.
for me
Yeah.
too. That's
Yeah.
why I came to your
There's
iPhone.
so much.
That's why I came to your
so
iPhone
much
workshop.
now with the phone that people don't realize, and you can make stunning prints, 20 by 30 easily.
I was
Yeah.
pretty amazed at, for me, we do workshops and we do a lot of local tours. We live in a high tourist area.
Sure.
And the iPhone, I'm teaching more iPhone photography than anything, it seems like.
There's a
and
big
it's
demand for it.
specifically iPhone. I mean, I don't have a Droid, but Joe has one. And I studied, and Brian, the other guy who works with us, they both have Samsungs, and I studied that all, but nobody ever has one.
Right.
Everybody has an iPhone.
Yes.
In your
There are
workshop here,
more
there
apps.
was one person that didn't have an iPhone in
That's
that big
right.
class of, I don't know, you had 40 people in there.
That's right.
There was only one person who didn't have an iPhone. It's crazy. Man,
Yes.
they have really got to, we need to learn
It's
how to
the
market
apps.
like Apple.
I know. Well, the apps is what the app developers are developing for the iPhone more so than the Android, at least for photography. So
okay.
that's what one of the reasons is. It's a great platform for that. So anyway.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, yeah.
And actually, I want to make sure, I don't know, is this the time to mention, there are a couple of apps that do impressionistic stuff.
Well, may as well.
Should we
mention-
talk
I'm
about
just
that
about to
now,
go into
or-
post-processing, but start there.
Okay, so there's one app called Average Camera Pro, okay? When you go into the App Store, you're going to look up, it's AVGCAM Pro, all one
Now,
word.
we're talking about apps for the iPhone.
For the iPhone.
Not for your real camera.
Right, right. And so that is an app where you can do up to 128 photos in the phone all at once. Boom, it puts them together. You've got your multiple image.
And by the way, we both might, and I'm sorry if I was talking too much during your thing, because I was next to, a really close customer friend.
No.
And we were like, I kept going, shh, because we were talking too much. We're like, and we're looking up the Average Camera Pro, and she couldn't find it because she put AVG. You have to type out average.
Oh, you do? Okay, I thought.
AVERAGE.
All right.
And then you'll see it says AVG.
Okay, I'm glad you
But in
said
order
that,
to
because
find
it's
it,
been a while since I tried to buy
I did it yesterday.
Okay, okay. Were you able to find it that way?
Yes, by typing the whole word out.
And the icon has kind of a purplish, it's purple and green, and I don't know.
That I don't remember.
But anyway.
But she couldn't find it because she wanted to buy it, and she couldn't find it. So I typed the whole word in.
So you
and it
do
came
have to
up.
type the whole word.
Yeah,
Okay, good to
yeah.
know.
Average Camera Pro, but that is
It's
I think it was 99 cents.
A lot of fun. Best
'Cause
99 cents you ever spent.
Yeah, because we were like, that's why we were talking. Like, oh, we're gonna try that. No, I can't find it.
Exactly, exactly. And then the other one I would like to recommend is Slow Shutter.
Okay.
And that's one where you can do all the long exposure stuff. It goes all the way to bulb if you wanted. You could even do bulb with that app.
And that's the whole word. The whole name of it is Slow
Slow
Shutter.
Shutter.
And that you do.
There may be other ones called, Slow Shutter Cam and things like that, but you don't want that. You want just Slow Shutter. And it's got a blue and white. It's like a blue background with a white wheel-looking thing.
How much is that? Do you know?
I don't know
Don't
exactly.
remember.
But
Okay, but I know the Average Camera Pro was 99 cents.
yeah,
'cause
I mean,
bought
in
it
the
yesterday.
iPhone world, I've never seen any app more than about $10, $9.99. So, anyway.
Okay, so that's good.
Yes.
Those are good for if you
Cheap
want to do
entertainment.
that kind of cool stuff on your iPhone.
On your phone. And so if you have a camera that won't do
Actually,
more
it
than
might
two,
be on your
let's
Samsung
say.
too.
I think Average Camera Pro is available for the Android,
Okay.
if I'm not mistaken.
I just tried it.
Oh, Joe
Oh, really?
just looked and
Okay.
couldn't find it.
All right.
I do have a slow shutter long exposure.
That might be one that would substitute for the one that's available for.
So for the audience who can't see what's going on or hear, Joe Fitzpatrick has a Samsung, so he was looking it up. He could not find Average Camera Pro, but he did find Slow Shutter or something similar.
Something like it.
It's got the same icon.
Oh, okay. So,
Okay.
yeah. Okay.
Maybe it's made by the same company.
Okay. So cool to know. All right.
Yes.
So let's talk about post processing from our big boy camera.
Okay. All right. Yes. Yes.
So now some of these techniques you said you could do, but let's say you did everything in camera. So you're going to bring in some of these impressionistic photos into Photoshop, Lightroom. I don't know. What do you use?
Usually Lightroom is what I
Okay.
use most of all. And then I'll use Photoshop for maybe 20-30% of the time if I need to. If you're doing, so one of the ways that I suggest people do this if they don't have in-camera capability is to use a script. It's a free script or a plug-in to Photoshop that they can install in Photoshop, and you do have to do it in Photoshop, not Lightroom.
Okay.
And be able to pull all the images up and just hit a button. You browse to the image files, hit a button and it says okay. Make sure you don't check the box that says align all these photos,
Oh,
because
right.
it defeats the purpose of what you're doing. And then you just sit back and boom, you have your image. So it's the same image that you would have gotten if you had a camera capable of doing that. And I suggest to people that are going to try that they take a picture of like their hand or a finger or something in the beginning before they start doing their series of images. Then they take another shot of their hand and that way when you get it up into Lightroom or Bridge, you can pick out which images you're going to use and bring into your
Yeah.
script. So that may be a little more
Now,
complex
are you
or
making that
complicated
script
for some.
on your own?
No, it's out there on the web, and I can give you for the show notes. There's a URL people can go
that
to
would be awesome. Yeah.
and download that free script. So you do have to quit Photoshop after you've installed it, and then reopen Photoshop.
Okay.
So
It's funny you said that because somebody taught me this technique. It was in the middle of the day. We were out in the Everglades, which is what I like to do, right? Especially in the summer when I have some time. And I think he had some ND filters, and he was doing some long exposures with the water. And I said, man, I wish I had because this was before, actually, Joe gave me some for a present, but I didn't have any. You know, I bought one of those ND filters that changes, and I
Yes.
never knew how to use it because I was always going too far and doing the X. Then I learned, don't turn it so far, you won't get the X. But anyway, I'm like, man, I wish I could do long exposures. It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
sure.
He said, I'll show you how to do it. But he had me take a picture of my hand
That's
first,
right. Yes.
and then on the tripod, just, focus on, I think I focused on a cypress knee. And it was running water. And he said, just take a bunch of pictures, like 20. And so I went into Photoshop. He taught me all this. And I wrote an article on it somewhere on the blog. I can't remember what it's called. But so you do the same thing. You blend all those pictures, but you do line those up.
Right. With that,
And
you
then,
would line them
of
up.
course, anything that wasn't moving, the cypress knee was sharp as all get out, but the water looked like that silky water, like I had
Right.
done it in the middle of the night or with the ND
Sure,
filter or something
sure.
like that. And then, of course, you took that picture of the hand at the end.
At the end.
So you know that those 20 pictures are the pictures, or else.
Right.
But that was a really exciting thing for me when he taught me that. And you're exciting. I mean, I like to do things. I like to edit, but when you learn how to do something cool in camera, to me,
Exactly.
I don't know, it's just so exciting.
It is very exciting. Yeah. Plus, you get immediate results, of course, with digital.
Yeah.
Unless you don't have that multiple capability, but you can use the script.
Now,
for
if
that,
you're not
so.
going to do it, though, let's say that you're going to do it in camera, but then you're going to pull it into Lightroom. Are you going to continue to edit, or
I'm
is
not
that
going
it?
to do a whole lot of editing once that. Yeah,
okay.
I'm a big believer in trying
That's
not
it?
to do a ton of I'll do all the basic adjustments of that, like the raw converter, but beyond that I don't do much at all to
'Cause
the
you're
image.
like, I'm so good, I don't
Well,
need to
no,
edit
that's
this.
not it. That's not it at all. It's just number one, I don't like it spending all that time doing but I will definitely do a basic adjustment on an image.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
but I just try not
But
to.
that's kind of it.
Yeah, there's no reason to, do HDR or any of that usually.
so cool.
Yeah. So
That
anyway.
is so cool. I cannot wait. Yesterday when I took your cell phone class, and I mean, actually more than anything, you inspired me by just seeing the pictures that you took.
Oh,
Because
thank
you
you.
took some amazing pictures with your cell
Well,
phone.
and that's the thing. A lot of photography is just training your eye to see. I really believe that, and I can't emphasize that more to people.
And the best-
And it's like asking a chef what kind of oven they used. Wow, this is an amazing meal. What kind of oven was it? It's not about the equipment or those are just tools to translate your vision.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
And you had a lot of abstract stuff too.
Yes, I do like a lot of abstracts, and I guess it sort of falls in line with Impressionism.
Kinda, yeah. I
They
mean,
kind of go hand in hand. I have no
It's
idea
like
why I'm
Impressionism
drawn to that,
is
but
like the first step to
I
abstract.
guess so. I guess so. Right, the entry
It'll
into
lead
it.
you into it. It's the gateway drug.
It is. That's it. There you go. So yeah, I just love abstracts too, and in my macro work especially, I enjoy that.
That's awesome. The next time we have you on the show, we're going to talk about macro.
Good,
and,
good.
And
I'd
maybe
love
macro
to.
and abstracts. That would be kind of a
Absolutely.
cool topic, I think.
Love to.
All right, so let's summarize. So we talked about. I don't remember. I'm going to go back and look. All right. So we talked about the basic. So mostly the multiple exposures we started with.
Right.
Basic was just moving the camera
Well, we did the
Into the
multiple
V,
exposure Monet.
right?
That was the one where you're moving everything slightly out of alignment. Then we did the tilt and the spiral and the soft glow.
Okay.
And what else?
No, that was.
I can't
I think
remember.
I think that was it.
Yeah.
I think.
And there's at least 7.
Oh, Squiggle.
Squiggle, that's right. There's 7 at least in this book of
In your
mine,
book?
Impressionistic
How
Photography.
much is your book?
It's $40, and it is available on my website.
And what is your website?
It's charlesneedlephoto.com.
You couldn't get charlesneedle.com?
I know. Well, I wanted the word photo
Oh,
in there. So.
I was thinking, how many people with that name could there be?
That's right. You'd be surprised. There are a few, but
I am surprised.
Yeah.
I had a nasty comment on YouTube. You know, that's where the haters live. So if you have a YouTube channel, you have to have really thick skin. So this guy, I mean, he had the most unusual name I ever saw. I thought, I'm not look this guy up. He told me I was the worst presenter on all of YouTube.
oh wow,
So I looked up his name, and there were like 1,000 of them.
there you go. Might not have been you.
Well,
Yeah.
I have to remember this technique because I was feeling very sassy. I mean, really the worst, you know. So I said, thank you so much for that insightful and helpful feedback. It's people like you that, you know, make YouTube a wonderful place to be, or something really, really sarcastic. And boy, he took that comment down so fast.
That's funny.
So now you know how to get rid of the people, because I think maybe they don't even know how mean they're being.
Right.
I
Yes.
don't know. But
I don't know.
anyway.
So yes, charlesneedlephoto.com, and it's $40. So.
charlesneedlephoto.com. And tell me about your macro book, since I've got a couple minutes.
I do have a book called Tiny Worlds.
Okay.
It's not available on my website currently, but hopefully soon. But if you email me, I can still send you that book.
Okay.
It's $30 for that book, and it goes through all the stuff you can do even at home with tabletop type macro things using glass, mylar, water droplets, shells, leaves, all kinds of fun macro stuff that you can do right in your own home, especially in the winter if you live in a cold climate. So it's
or
a
in
great
the summer
way.
in Florida is when we stay in.
There you go.
You know,
Exactly.
people are like, how do you stand the heat all summer? Well, what do you do in the winter?
That's right.
You stay in. We stay in.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, so Tiny Worlds is another book that I have, and then I also have an ebook called Creative Macro Photography that is available on my website, and that is $40, and it's just a PDF download, and it's 159 pages of macro information.
Okay.
So
And is it like more basic macro?
it's basic, but it also gets into a lot of the creative stuff too.
Okay,
So
okay.
even talking about the soft glow that we just discussed, and yeah. So if they go to charlesneedlephoto.com, you can
Okay.
see
And
that.
what do you have coming up? Now, I just told you when this was going to air, and I already forgot.
May.
Oh, in May. Okay,
think
so
it's-
what do you got coming up June and beyond?
So I've got. Well, I always go to Monet's Garden. That's going to be in early May.
And that's
sold out
every
already.
year in
Every
the
year.
spring?
Usually, well, some years I'll go in parts of the summer, or I even went in early September one year. So it varies when I
Okay.
go, but I almost always go to France and do the Monet's Garden. I'm going to be in Holland and doing Kuchenhof, and that's an amazing garden.
wow.
And that one's full. But then in June, I'm going to also be on Cape Cod, and I'm going to do the gardens of Cape Cod as private gardens, pretty much, in Cape Cod. And that'll be about a 4-day workshop, I think. And then I'm going to do a 1-day workshop right before July 4th on Cape Cod on the iPhone.
Okay.
And that'll be advanced creative stuff on the iPhone. But you can come to that if you're a beginner too. I mean, I'm going to cover the whole thing.
Okay.
And that's a 1-day class. And then in, let's see, I can't remember all of it. There's
well,
a
you
sheet.
don't have to tell everything.
Yeah,
Just give us a general idea.
let's see, I'm going to be going in, I need that sheet.
I think a lot of people are planning into 2021 already.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
So the
I'm
Monet's
trying to remember
Garden is
because
the
there's
one, though.
some. Oh, I'm going to be in Atlanta doing the macro workshop in late October with all the toys and stuff. We bring in the mylar and the glass and all that stuff.
Oh.
And it's a classroom that I rent at the Atlanta Botanical Garden So they also allow my group to go in early and photograph in the Orchid Center there. And it's one of the most beautiful orchid centers I've seen anywhere. I mean, I've been to Longwood Gardens everywhere. It's stunning, stunning orchids in there. So we get to go in with private access there and do that. And then I'll be doing the Mike Moats Macro Conference in Spartanburg, South Carolina, toward the end of October.
Oh, wow, you're a busy
but
man.
they're all listed on the website. It is currently under construction, but it's got a list of all my workshops and how to get in touch with me and all of that's on there, and how to order some of the books. So
Okay.
it's all there. And then in 2021, I'm super excited because when I'm over in Europe and doing the Monet thing this year, I've got appointments lined up for a whole week. I'm going to go around with a contact I have over there who's helping to arrange all of this. And we're visiting about 15 different private gardens in Kent and Sussex and Gloucestershire and all these different gardens so that I can do a private gardens of well, it'll be private and a few public gardens of the UK
So
or
that's a
England.
scouting trip.
Right, and that'll be in 2021. I haven't decided which month exactly yet, but it'll be public and private gardens of England.
Wow.
So,
how
and if
exciting.
somebody really wanted to, and they have deep pockets, they could come to France first and then Monet, or
Why not
and
just
then
just
England.
keep going.
Exactly. So, but
Why
anyway,
not?
so I'm passionate about what I do and feel very lucky to be able to actually make a living
Yeah.
helping other people
That-
to really elevate their photography. And
That's awesome. Well, you're a very inspiring guy.
well, thank you.
So I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
It's really, I mean, I met
Thank
you
you for
a couple
having
of
me.
years
It's a
ago,
pleasure.
but this was
That's
the
right.
first time I got to see you in action,
Right.
and it was really, really good. And this was
Well,
a great
thank you.
interview, so thank you.
Well,
thank
thank
you
you.
so much for being on the
Thanks
Understand
for
Photography
having
Show.
Thanks for having me.
And to the audience, remember to check out the show notes at understandphotography.com. We're going to summarize kind of what we said and some of the techniques. We're going to have links to Charles' workshops and to his website, charlesneedlephoto.com. And while you're on our website, please, click here for freebies and join our mailing list. We send out a newsletter. In fact, it was funny because when I first started I started my newsletter when I started my business. And first it was like unsubscribe, and now people are like, can I get a copy of your newsletter? Because we really do pack it full of good photo tips and things like that, so you're going to get a lot out of it. And plus it tells you what's going on at Understand Photography. I'm Peggy Farren. Thank you for joining us on the Understand Photography Show. We'll see you next week.